Hi, and welcome to the Selling in the Motor Trade podcast in association with CarWow, the online car-changing destination. Together, we share tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, improve your service department, and generally put more profit into your department, dealership, or dealer group. I'm your host, Simon Bowkett, or some of you might already know me as Skippy. Firstly, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. So can I ask you, how do you go as a dealer group cope with the demise of a brand? Now, demise, I don't know if that's the right word to talk about it, but you're the largest dedicated Jaguar Land Rover business in the country. And when I mean dedicated, you're a Jaguar and Land Rover. Some people may have had more Land Rover businesses, but you were dedicated. Then, of course, Jaguar decided to cut the network from, I don't know the numbers, but 100 odd, I think it was. I believe they're cutting the network to around 20 dealerships. That's got to be tough. How do you deal with that?
Well, firstly, nothing we could do about it. It was a decision made for us. So you just have to adapt. There's, again, Rawdon, who was MD at the time of JLR, came and saw all the investors personally, sat down and said, look, this is what's happening. Clearly for us, it was a big issue. We had 5 Jaguar dealers, 4 of which were soulless. And in Hull in particular, we just built a new arch facility, soulless arch facility that we told was closing.
How long ago had you built it before?
It'd been open 18 months.
That's good.
Yeah, expensive. Yeah. Listen, expensive, but it is. It happened to us before. We were Mercedes-Benz dealers, and oddly, my father would have done anything for Mercedes-Benz, anything, because it was the foundation of our business. It was the first business that he'd bought, working for Sutton's Motor Group. He bought Huddersfield Garages back in 1978, and then we had 3 Mercedes-Benz passenger car business and a Mercedes truck business in Manchester, and fundamentally, they made all the money in those days. We had Jaguar businesses, but they didn't really make a lot of money. They were good businesses. And of course, in the early 2000s, Mercedes-Benz came along, totally rationalized. And we were, in those days as well, businesses of our size, they weren't really seen as the future. Trevor Finn had built Pendragon up to be this, the mighty being. And everybody, not everybody, but Mercedes-Benz particularly thought at the time that you needed to be big. And so Huddersfield got absorbed into Leeds, Pickering got crossed off the map, Macclesfield went into Manchester, which Mercedes-Benz wanted for themselves. And so we lost that, and we just had to adapt. My father was desperately unhappy, and not the stuffing out of him, to be honest, for a bit. But I'd never really been involved in Mercedes-Benz. I'd always been involved in Jaguar. And so I took Mercedes-Benz compensation money and started to buy Jaguar businesses, and then various other things on the way. But yes, you're right. We were solely Jaguar Land Rover, but you adapt, don't you? You just have to. And as I sit here today, yes, we will be one of the new Jaguar dealers in Liverpool, but as we sit today, there is no Jaguar business to speak of. But we've kept the vast majority of the people, and we've just adapted, and we sell more used cars. We are still championing used Jaguars. We're selling a lot of those, but from Land Rover businesses. We sell more Land Rover cars. We sell more new Land Rover cars now, and we try and keep all the service customers. So you just adapt your best you can. You will see how it develops. There's just a possibility that, if the Land Rover job continues to grow and the new product that comes, and, that actually we could be a business of the same size out of 4 rooftops, the same size as we were out of 9 rooftops. Now, let's be honest, if you can make the same money out of 4 businesses that you had out of 9, would you take it? Absolutely, you would.
But also the reduction in your headcount wasn't huge. I was so impressed with how well that you and your management team were. I don't know if placing other people is the right word, because these are people, but your headcount was minuscule compared to what it could be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I know it's very glib to say it's all about the people, but we had some really good people who knew what to do, who we'd invested in. They'd invested in us, we'd invested in them. It would be lunacy, other than those who geographically couldn't come with us, But if you think, Shrewsbury, we retained all of those people. So we've lost the brand, but we've actually we have more people working in Shrewsbury today as a Land Rover dealership than we did when it was dual franchised. Liverpool, the same.
Mhm.
We've taken a number of people from the Sheffield and Wakefield business and put them into Hull. And obviously, then we've taken Omoda and Jaecoo in Hull as well, which has given us another brand. So that's absorbed some people. So, in truth, the headcount was lost, but we didn't want to lose those skills, Simon. It made no
Mm.
sense.
Yeah.
And they wanted to stay working for us. Now, in fairness to them, some people are now doing longer journeys,
Mhm.
but they've kept their service, they've kept their way of living as well, and their standard of living, and it worked for us. And while ever we can keep employing those people and keep them gainfully employed, we will. One
Yeah.
of the other things we've done though as well is, which has increased our headcount, is we've separated new cars and used cars completely. So we don't have anybody selling both anymore. Well, we do. That's not true. Pickering is not big enough to have two separations. But in Hull and in Liverpool and Shrewsbury, we have dedicated new and used teams, which means more people
Mm.
in each team. So that's another way that really we've
Yep.
kept the head count. And we haven't done it to keep the people, just to keep the people.
It
We've done it
works.
because we believe the focus on
Yep.
selling new and selling used, because we look back historically, and as always, when the used car job is great, the new car job suffers and the other way around. And we recognize that we just couldn't afford that anymore.
Yeah.
Literally, it was about affordability. So we invested in more people. So we have more managers and we have more sales executives. But, touch wood, as I sit here today, it's working and our
It is working.
profitability has stabilized in the smaller
Yep.
business. But I think our turnover will be very similar. Yeah, we just adapt, don't we? Adapt
Yeah.
and learn.
Yeah, I know the conversations we had about the focus at Shrewsbury and keeping people focused on new or used. It really it is working. It definitely is working.
Okay.
Can I also ask then? So Jaguar, for people who don't know, maybe in other countries listen to this, but vast majority of people in the UK listen to this and will know that Jaguar has said they stopped selling cars for I think it's over 12 months.
Yeah.
They called it what did they call it? They needed a gap, a pause just to reset the brand. Um, uh,
Yeah.
can you just go through what do you do as an investor when you're going to be Jaguar going forward, but you've got nothing to sell for 12 months?
Yeah, you
You've
wait.
got cars to service, of
You
course.
wait. You wait and make do.
You just
Well,
get
no, listen,
on.
I honestly, I understand and I'm fully supportive of that. I've been very fortunate from the very early days to see the new Jaguar product,
Okay.
and the three cars that are coming, and they are so different, and they are in such a different place in the market from the existing Jaguar brand that there had to be a gap. There simply had to be. You couldn't possibly continue one to the other. There had to be a pause, and there has
Okay.
to be a total reset.
Okay.
And we have to acknowledge that 90% of our Jaguar customers will be lost to us. But it's just the nature of the beast. It wasn't, it was one of those strange things. It worked well for a small number of dealers. I wouldn't have said that Jaguar worked particularly well for the network. And of course, it didn't work at all for Jaguar Land Rover. They just couldn't make any money out of it. But we loved it, and we made plenty of money for us. But we were the exception, not the rule. So it had to change, and we understand that. And what we all know is that when Jaguar does come back to the market, it will come back with such a unique
Mm.
product that honestly, I know people have seen it now, and we've had the unveiling,
Mhm.
but and that was a
You've
moment.
seen it in the flesh, though. You've seen it in the flesh, and
I've seen
it's
all three in the flesh, yeah, and they are honestly, they are strikingly different from anything. They're not for everybody,
Mhm.
and obviously they are electric and they are expensive. And you say those two things today in the marketplace, and you think you'd be mad, but that will inevitably change. It will
Mm.
inevitably change. That's the electric car thing is not going away, is it? So,
No, no.
um, but yeah, look, difficult as an investor, and I speak to any of investors today waiting for Jaguar to come. Is a waiting game, and we all hope, and I know it'll be worth it ultimately, because that car will find its feet, and the volume of people who buy it, I really have no idea,
Mm.
but I know there'll be some people who buy it because I looked at it and thought, yeah, didn't you? It's just one of those things. You look at a car and you think, I could sell that,
Yeah, okay.
sell that. And I looked at it, I thought, yeah, I could sell that. Now, it's a relatively rarefied atmosphere, isn't it? At 120,000 or whatever the car ends up being, and all electric. But again, I think that will change.
Mm.
And one of the
It-
reasons why this pause is not an issue is that if you bumped everything a year or two down the road for big expensive electric car, that has to make more sense, doesn't it?
yeah.
Because for whatever anybody think today, it's just not going to find favor.
It's funny, in the industry, I heard many people say, whatever you make in Land Rover, you lose on Jaguar. And that's what the industry used to say. And before I was working with you guys, I turned up thinking that, but you bucked the trend. You definitely made money out of Jaguar.
But yeah, but don't forget we were Jaguar people first
mm,
who took Land Rover. And Jaguar was just in our blood. Craig, who you know well, my
yeah.
sales director, he was brought up on Jaguar. I was brought up on Jaguar. And so that was just a passion and a love.
Mm,
It wasn't, yes, all right, we weren't unique. We weren't unique. There were a number of people who made decent money, out of
yep.
Jaguar. Mostly family business, smaller groups, to be fair. But we weren't alone in making
Yeah.
money out of Jaguar. There were times when people made money out of Jaguar. There really were. The dealer network. It was really towards the end when the cost of arch facilities,
Mm,
became a real issue. That's when you had to focus on Land Rover because
yeah.
Land Rover needed to really work to pay the bills, and that's
Yep.
really why Jaguar lost it in the
Mhm,
end. I think. I mean, clearly, it never worked for JLR, but from a network perspective, you had to work Land Rover so hard, and Land Rover was and still is, the most profitable brand. If you get
mhm,
Land Rover right,
yep.
you really can make a lot of money. It's a great brand for that when it works,
Yep.
but like anything else. So I think that was really that what saw Jaguar off ultimately, that putting them together. Like anything, if you're soulless,
Mhm,
you're going to be better, aren't you? You know
yeah.
it.
Yeah. So, talking about the different franchises, so in 2019, there were 44 franchises represented in the UK. And 2025, I believe the number's 63. We used to say for a long time, the Chinese are coming, the Chinese company. I think it's fair to say the Chinese are here
Yeah.
now. Well, they definitely aren't Hatfields. What impact do you think that's going to have on the traditional manufacturers? Um,
Well, they're disruptors, certainly.
mm,
But my experience with Omoda Jaecoo is that they're not disrupting with anything that's new. They're just disrupting with, I don't know, a different product, good price, great warranty.
mhm.
Um, and I suppose they're only doing what the Koreans did 20 years ago or more, aren't they? And I
Yep.
was a Hyundai dealer very early on when Hyundai took it back from the RAC. And I remember meeting the Koreans at the time and this lasting impression that was true, which is you just knew that whatever it was going to take, they were going to do it. You knew it.
And they did.
And they
Yep.
did. And
Yep.
now you look at Hyundai and Kia, they've got 200,000 units,
Hmm.
and it's taken them a long time. To be fair, the Chinese, their expectation is that they will get there much, much quicker than that.
I
But
think they will.
well, I think they will. Yes,
Yeah.
everything's quicker now, isn't it? But the product's fantastic, and I guess for the traditional people, they're just going to have to accept a smaller share of the cake,
Yeah.
aren't
I do worry about Ford and Vauxhall. I don't know the percentages, but you were a Ford dealer. What sort of market share did they have 30 years ago? Vauxhall,
well,
what market
when
share did they have? It's got to really hurt the traditional.
Ford had 20, 26, 27% when I
Wow.
was when I started with Ford. And then British Leyland, Vauxhall. Did British Leyland have about 15 and Vauxhall 12? Anyway, between the three,
Yeah.
Ford, Vauxhall, British Leyland, they had more than 50%, those three. So very different. But I guess if you look at, Stellantis, you've seen Stellantis, don't you? You've seen Stellantis results today. You know, you can almost see, can't you, where the pressure is going to come
Yep.
and who is going to get nibbled away at, and whether they stay in a reduced capacity, whether more multi-franchising just becomes acceptable and understood and acknowledged. I mean, you have to say, don't you? And I say I'm old, but you have to say if you look forward and you saw four or five brands on the same site sharing the same space as that used to be shared by one, you would think that's going to be messy and not great for those brands. You think. Now, it may be, of course, that everybody just accepts that as the norm and says, yeah, listen, you've got those four or five brands that are all together. You wander onto a site, you can pick and choose between them. They're all owned by the same operator, and that manufacturers are happy to sit alongside one another. Clearly, part of the agency thing we're talking
Mhm.
about is that complete openness and understanding that somebody else would be alongside you and could be alongside you. And so what? And that's a change in mentality. But whatever it's a franchise model, you're always going to want that uniqueness of brand. So I think it's going to be hard.
The
And
focus on brand. Yeah,
yeah, but how do you focus on four or five brands at once,
you
Simon? It's hard,
can't.
isn't it? You
It's so
can't.
difficult. You
You can't.
can't.
And so what you end up doing is you end up focusing on the thing that's good for you at the time.
Yep.
And if you happen to be poor, then you will just get nothing. You'll be the fledgling dying at the back of the nest, won't you? That's the
Yeah.
reality. And so I don't know. So I do fear for some of the brands, I
Mm.
have to say. Or the argument is that they're still soulless, but there's 50 of them, like we said at the beginning. There are 50 Renault dealers and not 100, maybe. And maybe that's how it works. But there's no question that the Chinese brands are here, the product's strong, and if the customers like it, what are you going to do? The one thing that I do know is I don't think that the established manufacturers can afford to make cars as cheaply as the Chinese.
No,
So if it comes to a price war,
not
there is
EV
only
vehicles.
one winner.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, EV is the Chinese are winning that war.
But what's
Uh,
interesting with Omoda and Jaecoo, when I first got talking to them and making an assumption, I'd had a look and see what the product was, but assuming that this was all going to be just an electric, event, that they still see, a
ICE.
real place for internal combustion engine cars.
Yeah.
And they're here, and yes, we're selling them, and and people are buying them. So again, that's the point I make. It's nothing radical and new.
Mm.
They're just coming with some old-fashioned, great retail propositions, really strong warranty proposition, and encouraging people to take a chance. And at this moment in time, it looks like the buying public of Britain is very much prepared to take that chance and dive into what is in essence a new brand.
The other thing we've got to look at is the tariffs that Mr. Trump might be talking about on Chinese cars. Europe, they're talking about the tariffs in Europe. Now, I know UK is not part of Europe, but actually, what will these Chinese manufacturers look at the UK, the Australian markets, thinking, okay, I think that's going to really affect how many of these other brands are going to want to come into the UK market. I think we're going to continue to see the growth of the Chinese brands in the UK.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And again, as I sit here, I don't know, but you would if you're a betting man, you would say, and the continued demise of some of that European stuff. Because it just won't, I can't really see what its appeal is going to be. Because it's not going to be price.
Nope.
It's certainly not going to be quality, because the quality is, the quality of the product that we've seen is absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
So it can only be brand perception, can't it? And then ultimately you say, well, actually,
Mm.
if you get over the brand perception, that Renault or Citroen or whatever it may be is a better brand than Omoda and Jaecoo, that won't sustain for long, I'm certain.
Mm.
So, but again, rationalisation then of manufacturers.
Mm.
Do you see it as you see it on the retail side? Do you suddenly see manufacturers joining forces?
Yeah.
Chances again, and that's right. The only way we survive is together.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know.
Mm.
But it's a peculiar time, isn't it? It is a
Yeah.
peculiar time in the industry with agency and electric.
There's
Both
so
of
much
those.
change. Since I've been in the industry, the change that's happening or happening in the last 5 years is massive. Have you ever been out to Shanghai, the motor show out there, and seen anything like that? I've not done it myself. It's one of those
No,
things
no, no. I went
I
to Korea with
yeah,
Hyundai, which is very interesting. But I have been to China, but I've not
yeah.
been out to Shanghai and
Yeah,
seen what's happening out there. I went to China years ago. I haven't been recently, but no, I know obviously people who talk of
yeah.
it almost like a space age
Yeah,
outcome.
yeah. I'd be interested to see that, but but also the bombarded with the amount of brands coming through there. Be definitely an interesting space to see what's happening
Well, they
there.
aren't all going to land, are they? It's not
I
possible.
can't do.
The market can't take them, so because it's not that sophisticated in truth. But three or four will end up coming and
Yep.
sticking, won't they? But the others will fall by the wayside. But the first three or four that get volume and take hold, they will definitely, they'll definitely stick.
But they have deep enough pockets to buy the market to start with. Where the Koreans, I think it was a slower burn. Well, it was. But I think these guys, you look at BYD and their growth, it is phenomenal what they've done in such a short space of time, and others. It
Yeah,
really is.
yeah, listen, if you are a traditional manufacturer, you're looking over your shoulder, aren't you, and thinking, what can I do? I think one of the issues potentially is that the answer, what can I do, is not a lot.
But having said that, you're always forward thinking. Okay. When I first met you and your sales director, so I did my salesperson's research. I mentioned before, I like to find out about the company and qualify. And I can't remember if it was you or Craig who said this, but I said, you guys are really punching above your weight. Can I ask, why are we here? Okay. You're doing a really good job. And you or Craig said, let's fix the roof while the sun is shining. So
It's
I,
shining. Yeah.
yeah, I've seen firsthand that you've always invested in the future. I know that now. Where's that forward-thinking mindset come from? Is it your father? Has it always been there? Is it something inbuilt?
No, well, to be fair, it comes from a very fortunate place of being profitable.
Mm,
So you can afford to make the right decisions at the right time. Fix the roof while the sun's shining. Yes, that is a saying that we have, and it's absolutely right. But most importantly, it's always about having a slightly competitive edge for us.
mm,
And when we met you, and we wanted to have a change of direction in our training profile, it was also about attracting people. We talked earlier about people who've been in the job a long time. If you to attract people, if they know that there is an established training structure, because we've both been in the industry a long time. How many people have come and gone in this industry, stayed with it less than 18 months
yep.
because they weren't trained properly?
Hmm.
They weren't. There's no induction.
Yep.
There's your desk. There's it. Off you go, crack on.
Mm,
Um, we were absolutely adamant that we had to stop the churn of people because we had the same churn of people. 20% of our staff would churn regularly. I mean, 400 people, 80, 100 people in some year, 25% in one year we got to. 100 people came and went. And we had to stop that. And we looked at what was the reason. And of course, that 3, 6, 9 month churn was huge.
mm,
Just the people who, now, was it our fault? Was it their fault? Did they misunderstand the industry? A lot of people, certainly from a sales perspective, think it's about the gift of the gab. They have no
mm.
understanding of the depth and the intricacy of the processes we
Yep.
employ. Um, but generally speaking, we wanted to try and cement people in
Mm,
and stay because that constant churn is so expensive. And that's really what it was. So, as I say, it's yes, it's a philosophy, but you need to have some financial strength to be able to invest. Not that it's particularly expensive, it's affordable, but nevertheless, it just is about investing that relatively small amount of money in each individual that makes them think, whether they love or hate us or the business, at least they think, "Oh, well, I may as well see this through." And then once we get to the end of the training program, largely speaking, those people are then cemented in. And that's really where it comes from.
So, what advice do you have, Gareth, for managers listening to this? So, people listening to this might be a after sales manager, a service manager, and they want to progress within their own organization. What advice do you have? Because you have people in your business all the time want to progress. What advice do you have that manager, maybe someone else's organization who wants to progress?
Um, Talk less, listen more. The things that I was taught, you've got two of these and one of these.
Yeah.
So listen. Um, and I don't know, you're judged by your deeds, not your words. So if if you're going to do it, if you say you're going to do it, do it. Make sure you do it. That's something that we drill into people in our business all the time. Don't say you're going to do it. And people often say to me, particularly for Jaguar, when people used to, friends and colleagues and investors would look at our Jaguar performance and say, how do you do that out of Jaguar? And I used to say to them, all the things that you say you're going to do,
Mhm.
yeah, we'd actually do them.
Just do it.
Well, look,
Yeah.
I'm not smart arsing anybody here. I'm really
Yep.
not,
Yep.
because as I sit here today talking to you, it unfortunately will be happening in one of my businesses. Somebody will have said they do something. I'll ring you back before 10, and they won't have.
Yep.
But we just try and make sure that we limit those things. And I think for anybody wanting to progress in any industry, my business, your business, any industry, if you are good to your word, then you will get on, won't you? You just will. Pick up the phone. That's a hard call. Yeah, but it's not going to get any easier. It doesn't get any easier if you leave it till the afternoon. If you said 10 o'clock, swallow hard, pick up the phone,
Yep.
deal. And
Yep.
that's the best advice I would give anybody. Deeds, not words.
So true. I get so many people saying, Simon, I want to progress in this business. I'm a salesperson. I want to be a business manager, a transaction manager. What do I do? And they're sweet talking the manager. And it's like, just get on and make sure the job you're doing at the moment is the best you can do. Okay. Your actions speak so much louder than your words. Don't try and
And you
suck
will
up.
get you, and if you do that, you will get noticed.
It's
Definitely. You
don't
don't have
spend
to
your
do
time
anything else here.
sucking up to people or anything like that. It's not as an investor, that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for results. You're looking for
Absolutely.
what you're going to do there.
Dependability.
Ah, love that. Absolutely dependability. Okay, so let's talk electric vehicles now because, well, JLR is going to be pure electric.
Yeah.
Okay, it's going to be, it's where we're going at the moment. Yeah, some people are saying there on social media, it's a dead duck. Donald Trump's in now. We're all going to go back to diesel cars. I think we both believe that's not going to happen. The manufacturers are going down this path. Okay, the range is actually coming there. What impact is this going to have on the business model after sales, for example?
Well, yeah. And well, after sale, is it going to decimate after sales? I suppose it is ultimately. But
So,
I've said to everybody for many years now that although EV is a worry, what it does represent is the biggest potential windfall that the industry's had since everybody went to diesel from petrol.
how do you
Because
mean? How do you mean
well,
windfall?
everybody has got to buy a new car.
Ah, yes. Okay.
Literally,
Yeah.
everybody, all right, up to 2050, but every single person today has got to buy a new car, other than those who've got electric. So it's going to happen. And yes, timing is an issue, but I don't think the politics is changing. I really don't. And I know, again, talking to the JLR senior people, and they've got people talking within
Hmm.
government. Um, the current government and their green agenda is here to stay. They think it's vitally important to keep young people engaged, and they think that's what the youth of today want, and that they think that logically, it's going to happen. So I don't think the politics will change. The one thing that they have to do, and it is all about affordability, and I do understand it is, we need something like a scrappage scheme that's going to get everybody over the line. You need that first chunk of money that's going to be put down as a deposit because people can afford the payments because they're paying
Yep.
the payments now. What invariably they don't have is the big lump of money to put down on an EV. That then when we start to see volume, residual value will greatly improve. That will make them more affordable, and it will just become, a natural churn. It really will. I can't. It's absolutely inevitable. And the other thing is that, and I only speak from a JLR perspective, but I've seen the JLR range of cars that are coming, and they are absolutely fantastic. Honestly, I'm not saying that just because I'm a JLR dealer. I'm really not. They are the most beautiful things. And you look and think, oh, wow, I am definitely going to sell those. Now, but they're expensive. But again, it doesn't really matter because the price will settle
Yep.
and the politics will settle. And you'll just start to see more and more investment in charging. You'll see more and more EVs come to the market, whether it's for the Chinese or everybody else. Those cars will come eventually to the market and they'll start to grow, and diesel will be gone completely. You've seen it now. The
Yep.
diesel reduction is there
Yep.
continually.
Yep.
And all right, it's been replaced with petrol. But once the politics, once there's affordability within politics to deal with the EV issue, and everybody knows it's there, they need a stimulus, don't they? We've got to have a stimulus that says, right, now's the time for the bulk of the British people to buy an electric vehicle. And when that happens, it will just flow. We know all the products there.
Yep.
Everybody's got the product ready. The only reason it's not coming to market today is because nobody wants to buy it today. And you'd end up discounting it to such a point that you'd ruin it forever. So all the cars are there. I just think it's a matter of time. But from a retailer, so from a retailer, there's that windfall, huge number of people changing the cars, wanting to change the cars naturally. Quite what we do with the part exchanges that are then unappealing is another matter, isn't it? But that's why so
Uh,
it needs scrappage or something like that. But those cars are still in the market till 2050, so it's not
mhm.
the end of the world. And there'll always be people who simply cannot afford an electric vehicle, so there'll be a home for those. I'm not overly concerned. More may end up at the scrapyard than are currently doing. Um, but the business model, it is a difficult one. I'm just building a new facility in Liverpool for Jaguar Land Rover, with 20 odd, 24. I think we'll probably end up 24 workshop bays.
Mhm.
It's what I need today. I probably need more today, if I'm being honest. But
Yep.
it's not what I need for too many tomorrows, is it? I'm not going to need 24 workshop bays for electric cars. I'm just not. Now, I may need more space
Mm.
for batteries out and things of that nature, but the space may be right, but I'm not going to have the number of technicians, and I'm not going to have the number of service visits
Mm.
because the wear and tear items on those cars just aren't there. So the business model will change completely. But again, everybody knows that and understands it. All manufacturers are modelling well into the end of this decade and looking at what they perceive to be the hours available for each workshop, and I'm sure they'll share that with their partners as developments go on. Clearly it's a conversation that we've had with JLR Network Development, because we'll end up with, I don't know, be 13 or 14 million when it's done, um, which is a huge chunk of money to put into a single dealership. But again, we had to be open and practical about what we see going forward and what we build. So we built it probably slightly smaller than we need today from a workshop perspective, but understanding that we just change our working practices and shifts and things of that nature to get over that short-term hump before it settles down. But we still see it as a profitable business, even though the model will change.
Yeah, it will change definitely. And for me, it's second time EV customers. Someone goes EV once, the high 90% of those people stick with electric vehicles. And of course, that's I don't think the government helps when they'll turn around and push back and say we're going to go for 2030, then 2035, but not take the targets off the OEMs. I think the 28% targets there. They need a joined up message, I believe. But we're not going to change the politicians. We're not going to change
No,
the
yeah,
government
no,
what they
but they
say.
have to. But they can't just pressure the manufacturers into pushing. They've
No,
got to create some pull, haven't they? And
exactly.
they understand that. But of course, the problem is, and it will only be exacerbated by the increase in defence spending. We're getting deep into it now, but the increase in defence spending is just going to mean, unfortunately, the EV retail pool money is going to go down the order of priorities, I'm afraid. But at some point, that
Mm.
is the only way that it can possibly happen, because if the marketplace isn't incentivized to buy EV, then they're just going to stay in their internal combustion engine cars, aren't they?
And how far away are we from getting a parity with a ICE vehicle, internal combustion engine, to an electric? I still think we're way off that at this stage.
At the current rate,
Yeah.
yeah, 2 or 3 years at least.
Mm.
You know, that needs to accelerate, doesn't it? It has
Yes.
to accelerate. And
Yeah.
again, I think it will. And we just need a really positive message. Well, we need certainty, don't we? We need certainty on 2030. We need some relaxation on the pressure on the manufacturers. We need some retail pull.
Yep.
And, the other problem, of course, is energy prices as well. I think people are looking at that and thinking, actually, is it any cheaper to put electric in my car than it is to put petrol?
Reality, if you charge home, significantly. If you have to charge
Significantly. God,
significantly, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
significantly. If you have to charge away from home, but actually, how many times? It's only the average customer is only 3 times a year they have to think about charging away from home. If you can charge from home, it's almost a no-brainer. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but
So
but
anyway, I think it's coming.
yep.
Nothing's stopping it. The train has already left, and the money that's invested in the products has to be realised in the marketplace and the manufacturers. They can't afford to
It,
turn around.
Gareth, you know a lot better than I will. That is it true that the OEMs are still losing money on most EV vehicles they're making? Are they still blowing their
Well,
brains?
only because of the subsidies, of course, they're
Yeah.
having to push into the market.
Yeah. Okay.
But even if you take a slight reduction in retail price, those cars can be profitable. But as you know, the thing with making a car profitable also is its volume. So
Mm.
once we get a volume of EVs, then
Yep.
they will be better. But undoubtedly, an electric vehicle is much more expensive to make than an internal combustion engine car. So they have to be sold at a higher price for manufacturers. So there's a lot of moving parts, Simon, that all need to come together. But I do think it's inevitable.
Mm.
It will be forced one way or the other, and let's hope it's forced profitably.
Well, we're talking about change here in the motor trade, and it's so much change has happened over the last 5 years. So, can I ask you, in the industry, since you've been in the industry, is there any moment you're particularly really proud of that the changes that you've had to go through within Hatfields?
Well, I referenced it before when we lost Mercedes-Benz.
Mm.
That was a huge change for us. And then, yeah, buying more Jaguar businesses. And that I suppose looking back, that was the point at which I took over the business as well. As I say, my father had always been very much a Mercedes-Benz man, and when we lost the Mercedes-Benz business, I wouldn't say he became disinterested because he'd been a Jaguar man through and through like me as well. But that gave me the opportunity to put my own stamp on it, and we bought Hull and we bought Shrewsbury, and we expanded our Jaguar portfolio. And from a business that, truthfully, the day that Mercedes-Benz came to see us and said, "You're out," we probably didn't have a business that day, if truth be told. We had Vauxhall in workshop and we had funny little bits and bobs, but Mercedes-Benz was the absolute beating heart of it. And in a relatively short time, we turned that around and we made Jaguar our principal focus, and we made some money out of it. And all our best people who had been in Mercedes-Benz, and I'll make no bones about it, that's where our best people were. We just moved them and we put them into our Jaguar businesses. And I say, then we bought businesses, we bought and inherited some really good people who were motivated. And that was the change. And a bit like we are now. Adapt again. Suddenly Jaguar's gone.
Yep.
Right, what do we do? Okay, it's the Apollo 13 moment, isn't everything on the table? Right.
Yep.
How do we make this into something that's going to work? And we did. And we all just said, right, this is what we're set to. We're going to sell that many more used cars. We're going to sell that many more new cars. We're going to maintain our sold hours despite the loss of the brand.
Mhm.
And as we sit here today, that's exactly what we're doing. And it's just about determination and desire. And if you've got that throughout your workforce, which we have, I mean, literally throughout my entire workforce, I'm absolutely blessed with that. Everybody, who works for Hatfields understands the message, and they work hard.
Yeah.
And tell you what, you've got 400 people who work hard, doesn't
It,
half make a difference.
it's culture, Gareth. When you walk into your business, you've got that right culture. It's something you can't measure or calculate, but you walk in there and it's there. And you go into a restaurant, don't you know if you're going to have a good meal or not before you even see the menu sometimes?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
And that's what you
Well,
have in
thank
your
you, but
business.
but it's not flukes. I mean, it's absolutely all managers, and individual people understanding the accountability. But if you go back to if you give them the responsibility, like one of the great lessons my father taught me, You can't have responsibility without authority, or the other way around. They have to go together. And if you're going to give people responsibility, you have to give them the authority, because you can't just expect them to have the responsibility and no authority, because that doesn't go anywhere. So we empower people. And if you feel as though you're in control of your job and you can determine the outcome, then you work hard. And particularly if the rewards are directly linked to the effort that you put in. And that's the other thing that we try to do. Absolutely every single person who works for me is bonused on customer satisfaction. Accountants, that's how it works. And so it means that you will pick up the phone, even if you're not in your own department. And I'm not saying it happens every single time, but I'm talking culturally, that's important. Nobody's looking at a phone ringing and saying, "Oh, that's not for me." It doesn't matter. They'll still pick it up and say, "How can I help you?" And again, that's something Noel Roberts taught me many, many years ago. That was his strapline, St. Helens Ford. How can we help you? And that's something that we have today. That's the first question. How can I help you? And that's so it begins.
Gareth, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Now, in wrapping up, again, this podcast is all about sharing tips and ideas on how to sell more cars, make more money in the motor trade. So I want to leave with the last question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received in your career? Something that you'd like to pass on to someone listening to this episode? Anything that stands out?
I hesitate to say it, but again, my father, he was a great one for sayings, and some that are repeatable and some that aren't. But he taught me many things. But years ago, he said to me something which stuck with me, and he mentioned it a few times. And he said, "Listen, you can deal with idiots, but you can't deal with liars." And he was really talking about me. He wasn't talking about other people. It was a lesson for me to say, look, you can be daft and, but if you tell the truth, actually, you'll always be able to deal with somebody. And it works both ways. I look at it, I think sometimes he was telling me about other people, but I realize he actually was talking about me. And that's something that I hope that you see when you come into our businesses, and anybody listening to this who works for me knows it. We are just absolutely dogged about telling the truth to customers, to manufacturers, to whoever it may be. We just tell them the truth and then deal with that. And that doesn't half uncomplicate your life.
Good advice. Great advice. Gareth, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. That just leaves me to say that all details of this episode and other episodes on the selling in the motor trade can be found on our website, simcotraining.co.uk. Go there to get a copy of our book, Words That Sell Cars. Go there to sign up to a free trial of our Sales Fitness online sales training program. Easiest way to get hold of me is Simon Bowkett through LinkedIn. Thank you.